Hey everyone, we're here at the Schell Games booth over at PAX East.
Looks like we've taken over this booth for a few minutes, but it's worth it.
We've officially hijacked.
We've hijacked the booth.
And today they're showing off Silent Slayer.
You'll see it on that background on the shot, but yeah.
Man, I just hopped in there. It's a good experience. But before we dive into Silent Slayer and all of that, today we're joined with Anna and Sam from the booth. But not only are they booth workers,
they're not the booth.
Than that. Yeah.
They're a little more than the booth.
Anna over here is the producer of Silent Slayer, and Sam is the technical director. So I don't know if there's two better people that we could talk to.
Well, I'll say one of them was like a human cheat code for you playing. I'll say that.
My Game Informer.
And the other one,
guy.
I think, is making sure everything's running perfectly for the player. So you definitely got the edge on that.
Absolutely. But before we dive into Silent Slayer and such, Sam and Anna, do you want to explain to our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what your role at Schell Games is?
Did you want to go first, Sam, or?
Sure. I mean, I've been at Schell Games 16 years now, I believe. And I've had a bunch of different roles as I've been at Schell all those years. I started just as like a tech person implementing features on projects. But more recently, I've kind of been a tech director for my past 3 or 4 projects. And yeah, Silent Slayer has been the most recent one, and I'm pretty excited about it.
And then I'm Anna. I'm a producer at Schell Games. That's unlike Sam. I've only been there about 7 years.
Only 7 years.
It's coming up. And as a producer there, I'm usually part of the project's leadership team. And that's kind of what I started at. My projects were smaller when I first started. I was kind of close to recent graduate. And then as I worked at Schell, my projects became bigger and bigger, and this is my first internal IP team.
So, being a producer, was that the path you wanted to go down to be a producer, or did you start somewhere and that's where your path has taken you?
I knew I wanted to get into games as I was kind of picking my college. I actually went to the art college and wanted to be like a designer, and I tried that on. That didn't quite work. I tried being an artist, and that didn't quite jive, but eventually my college program made me, we kind of worked in small teams, and I just kind of was the organizer, and it just kind of took off from there. So
the secret to not being in production is be disorganized, and they'll be happy with you doing the artwork then, right?
And his notes are very good. I've seen them, and they're very good.
Well, that's the problem. You do impeccable work, yeah, you're going to get recognized, and we can't let you draw and do with that. No, that's awesome. I would ask the same with you real quick. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
17 years with Schell?
Yeah, 16 or 17.
All in the tech side of things, or was yours? Okay.
Yeah.
And you've seen them go from more flat screen based to now exploring VR titles like Silent Slayer, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I worked on a Nintendo DS game that was also like an internal IP thing. And then I worked on various like attraction projects. I worked on Toontown. I worked on Pirates of the Caribbean Online. And then I started working in Unity, and we did a bunch of projects in Unity. And then more recently, I've been working on either Disney attractions or this internal IP project.
I think it should be noted that everyone in the VR space, people think Schell Games. They just think, okay, VR, that's
Top
what
VR
they do.
studio.
You do a simple Google search, you'll find out Schell Games as a whole is done much more than just the VR space. So that should be that's somewhere where I erred when I first stumbled on like oh, Schell, they're our AAA studio of VR. I'm like, oh, Schell's been around for a while doing so. Yeah,
I
not
suggest
your
anyone
first rodeo.
Go on the Wikipedia page for Schell Games and for Jesse Schell.
Look up Jesse Schell. Yeah,
you'll see some OGs in the gaming industry for sure.
Well, I like the time periods I'm hearing, because that gives me the feeling that when turnover is not high, people are happy where they are. 17 years, 6 or 7 years.
I have the impression that's the company culture at Schell, because you implied your 7 years as a little amount of time,
right?
Where 7 years is a lot amount of time, to say the least. But before we get too carried away on you two as well, today we are talking about Silent Slayer.
We are.
It's a pretty badass game, but I think that
it was shown on the Ruff Talk VR showcase.
Yep, a little kind of behind the scenes making of.
And they have put a totally different twist on vampire slaying per se than like what the brain might think.
Yeah, it's vampire slaying meets I expect you to die puzzles. It's awesome. But I don't think that we could have two better people to explain exactly what Silent Slayer is. So either one of you, do you want to explain to the listeners exactly what Silent Slayer is?
I'll let you do it, Anna.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Silent Slayer is about assassinating vampires by breaking into their coffin and disarming all the traps that they have laid out to protect them with the advice of a magical book. You didn't get to see too much of the book, but you probably heard him say, like, hey, don't do that, maybe do this instead. So the book is kind of like serves as like kind of a reference point for the players. You work your way up a clan. Basically, you start from like the people who are maybe a little bit lower in the hierarchy. Maybe their defenses aren't as great because they're new to the game, right? So as you defeat each vampire, it does get harder and harder. The traps get more elaborate, and there's more actually on the inside of the coffin. Today, you kind of mostly did the outside, but as you get through the game, there's more stuff to do inside the coffin.
And like, this isn't my first time using VR, and I messed up. I broke the nails. I dropped the nails.
Video footage of at least 3 times with a coach.
Yeah,
and you still mess. So patience is key with this. Patience, being quiet.
Yeah, it's a different vibe. I don't think there's. Yeah, we're talking about it. There's not too many games that have this sort of like slow, be really careful and kind of precision with, be careful with your movements type of games. So that's one thing we're really excited about is just that.
I like it because usually people go to speed things. That's the
guilty.
Yep. Well, I watched it.
Yeah.
You were caught.
Even when we tell them, we'll be like, be careful. You don't want to wake up the vampire. And they're like, we got it. Yeah,
well,
that's exact. 2 seconds later, you go, yeah, I know to put the nail down quiet.
You knew from the demo, you got to be quiet. Mm-hmm. You can't make a lot of noise. So that says that exactly how challenging it really is. If you went into it knowing a little and still were able to rustle up the
same mistakes, yeah. And there's no worse feeling as a gamer than when you go into a game, you lose or something goes wrong, and you go, I don't feel like that was me. I feel like that was the game.
Yeah.
But in Silent Slayer, you make a mistake and you lose, you instantly know it was because of you. You all did a great job matching the feel. If you go too fast, boom, it's going to pop out. You'll feel that little bit of haptic feedback just letting you know you're going too fast. So how much work did that take to really get that quote-unquote feel for the
Precision?
game?
Yeah, I mean, that was important. I think, we wanted to give good feedback so you knew when you made mistakes and why what you did wrong. Like you said, that was important to us during development.
Yeah, and the story that we want to tell is that you just start off like not knowing, the book kind of grabs you and it's like, hey, come help me do this thing. So we tried to mirror that experience where you're like, you don't really know much, but as you get better and better, we kind of take the hands off the wheel. We also didn't want players to get too frustrated. It is a pretty hard game, and we didn't want people to feel like, I'll never be able to get this.
I imagine if you beat the whole game and then you went back to that same puzzle I struggled with, it'd probably be a breeze, because now you know it more advanced, complex features. And I
like that it's forcing a little bit of patience, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just from a consumer standpoint, to have a different pace than the normal, I'm just going to go in guns blazing, let me try to get something as fast as possible, where from what I saw, it doesn't look like that option is not on the table, correct?
Yeah, and after you fail an encounter, you got to do the thing again. It's even harder.
I was even thinking that while I was playing it. I was like, this is the game I know I'm going to reach the last step on and lose and go back to the start. But, you know the mistake you did wrong, and that's huge for it. So I noticed that there's a little bit of lore in the book. When you opened it, it was kind of telling you a little bit about the vampire that, you're going to stab. How much is lore a part of this game? Is it more you just kind of go coffin to coffin, or do you really have a big overarching story in the game?
There is an overarching story, and you get it delivered through a couple different vessels. So the book is definitely a good reference point. The book also gives you a little bit of the spiel. You didn't get to experience it in the demo today, but when you're in that safe space where you're kind of putting together kind of like a giant, almost like a jigsaw puzzle, like a 3D jigsaw puzzle, the book actually kind of tells you like, oh, that person you just defeated is this person, and who you're going to go to next is like this person. And so there's a little bit of like a trickling of like what is happening throughout the different encounters with the vampire.
So I didn't see all the vampires. I only saw what you played, what was in the showcase. Are there historically accurate vampires in this, or are these all created by Schell Games?
You meaning like matching existing vampire lore?
Maybe they're real. I don't know. I'm just saying, but maybe somebody has a name of some that may or may not be.
Yeah,
I'll say as real as vampires could be.
We definitely created our own cast of vampires for this thing. So they're all unique. They're all unique vampires.
Yeah, I think we pulled, definitely thought about like, oh, what does it mean to be a vampire? What are some characteristics? Because we didn't want people going in and being like, that's not a vampire, right? But we also wanted to make vampires feel a little bit more fresh, like draw from different sources, not just like the European vibe, but other areas in the world.
I mean, it's a tough thing to do because you're working with material. Vampires, you every little kid in the world knows what. Everybody has their own image of it. So how do you keep that? So yeah, that's a good balance. If you're able to keep traditional vampire, we'll say, but then add the mix to make it your own vampire.
Yeah, it was also important to kind of be inclusive with it, right? Like have a variety of vampire characters. So
Get to stab everyone.
Yeah. Well, it's just funny because I picture people in the studio having their own personalities for each vampire, even though it's, it might be in a coffin or whatever the case. I thought the whole direction of knowing that Schell was doing a vampire game at first, I was thrown. I won't lie. We just came off I Expect You to Die 3, which some of our
amazing. Some of the best puzzles I've ever played in VR.
Yeah, number one go-to for anybody looking for a challenge. So I was like, oh, they're doing a vampire game. But then I saw there's puzzle elements in the game.
Have you heard the story of how it started, kind of?
That's where I was hoping to go with this.
Yeah. I mean, it was do you know about how we do kind of a Jam Week thing?
Yes, that I've heard.
So this did come out of Jam Week. So it was like it was a project with a group of developers, during a time where we take a week off from our normal work and everybody gets to work on a thing that they feel passionate about. And this project came out of that. And like it was kind of on the Jam Week that we did it. I actually wasn't on the team, Anna wasn't on the team, but like it was a big hit like that week. Like everybody was excited about it. Everybody was like crowded around because it was kind of fun to watch people play and you're like kind of rooting for people and then they get the jump scare. So it was like, it succeeded a lot on that day. And I think it got everybody excited about it as a project.
And how bare bones was that Game Jam tech demo that everybody was falling in love with?
I think visually it looked pretty good, honestly.
Really?
But it was like one level and it was like a little janky because I mean, we have a week to build it, but it was like, it kind of sold the vibe of what it could be. Sort of.
I am amazed at what comes out of the hackathons, Jam Weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You give people a little bit of time and the tools and good material. It blows me away because my brain is like, it'd probably take me years to do what took 1 week of.
And is games that the studio decides to go with coming out of these game jams, is that a common theme? Or is Silent Slayer the first one to become a full-fledged game?
No, there's been a few. Enemy Mind, which was a shooter game that we made a while back. Oh man, there's another one. There was like a Star Trek kind of like parody game that we made that was a Jam Week game.
I love that.
It was like on Steam. It was like a Steam game. So yeah, there's been a number of them. Yeah.
The concept of the game jams is so cool, and you see the results of it. Look at the type of experiences that we get because of it. And I know the game's still in development, so maybe it's a loose number. But do you have right now, a vision for how many vampires and levels you want to see in the final game?
We're not going to share that at this time.
Secret information.
We tried.
Yeah, had to at least poke into it.
Will there be a second one?
But I guess we are aiming for 4 to 6 hours is our good spot. So we're trying to aim for that much gameplay.
That feels very similar to I Expect You to Die 1, 2, and 3.
Well,
and just like I Expect You to Die 1, 2, and 3, you finish that final level, you could sell me a DLC or an expansion pack the next day. I instantly want more levels. I kind of have the feeling it's going to be the same thing with Silent Slayer. You stab that last vampire, you're going to go, what I wouldn't do to get another.
I just want to kill a little more.
Is that something on the studio's mind? Of course, it all depends on how the game does at release and everything like that, but is that already something in your brain you go, oh yeah, there's endless potential with this?
I don't think I have an answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously we want the game to do really well, and how well it does will probably depend how much we work on more content. But yeah.
Understood. Like I said, I can totally see this being the game that I finish, and I'm itching for more right away.
I've never finished the Schell game and didn't want more.
That's a good
point.
So
I wouldn't think this would be any other
That's a good point. So I got one more big one before, and then I'll pass it off to you if you have anything else. I know that Anna and Sam, they're both busy here. They've
working
been
their butts off today. You see the booth?
Dude,
every time we walk past this booth, it's wall to wall.
And we're stealing them right as the convention.
We had to wait for the convention
hall
to close just so we could see the banner.
Yeah, and when they're ready to go home and get some rest, we're saying, no, stay a little bit longer. So one last question to ask on my end, then I'll pass it to you. Since we have the producer and the technical director, it'd be foolish not to ask, do you have any tips for somebody that's listening that's going to go play Silent Slayer when it comes out? Do you have any tips for them as a new player?
I would take it all in. Like, listen to what you're doing, feel what you're doing, kind of what you did today, because I think that goes a long way to understanding, like, how do I get past this? I think it's very easy to kind of just rush in and be like, I'm just going to move really fast. So there's a lot of awesome intention behind every action that you do in the game.
And it's cool to get jump scared too. I think we try to like teach you through failure too. So you can fail and then get back in there and and learn something from that too.
That's awesome.
I'm excited. I didn't play the demo. I was watching you play the demo, but I want to know how the sound score is for it. I can only assume the sound's going to be good.
Well,
the sound effects are going to be good. The gameplay looked super smooth while you were playing it. So I have nothing but.
I'll tell you right now, it's one of the only VR games I've ever played that utilizes every one of your senses except smell. You need to use feel. You need to use sight. You need to use hearing. It's like all of your you don't need to.
I could have busted out some garlic or
really utilizing all of your senses except smell for now is to me essential for completing the puzzle. So that's a really cool element. You're locked in. You're laser focused.
Dude, I won't lie. I was just watching on the TV, but it was pretty cool to see.
So we know Sam and Anna, they're busy people. So
no, I don't want to tie them up. I know we still got, we're only halfway through PAX, still a couple more days, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday's always wall to wall. So what we saw here, maybe if I stand way across over, I'll catch a glimpse of the booth. But I think, they're representing the VR space really well. And I think the popularity of it's going to show. So I'm just grateful that you were able to take 15 minutes as you're ready to call it a day. But
yeah, thanks.
Oh, no,
We appreciate that.
No, I can't wait for the release. I'd love to get somebody back on after the release. Let the dust settle. Everyone high fives, can have a party.
Yeah, and I know you say depending on how the game does, I'm very confident in this one. I think when word gets out, people feel it. They really go, dude,
There's a reason we say Schell's the AAA studio of VR, dude.
We're excited to have people play it.
Hopefully the reception from this, PAX showcase gets out, and then, when the game's out, I think it's just going to be a wildfire from there.
I would call it's a home run.
So, thank you again, Sam and Anna. Like we said, we know you guys are busy, working hard today, so appreciate you taking the time. And for the listeners, go wish list, Silent Slayer. Go keep an eye on it. Yeah, you don't want to miss this one.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.